There is this oil block in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria called OML 127. The oil block covers part of what is known as Abami oil field and is under the control of some Nigerian and international oil companies, including NNPC. One of those companies operating in this oil field is Famfa Oil. To own an oil block in Nigeria as a company, first of all, you need to apply when the government announces that they want to give out some oil blocks. If your company is selected, you will then be given an OPL license, which gives your company the power to look for oil in the location you are assigned to. If the company finds oil in commercial quantity in that area, the company will then apply for OML license, which is the license that gives the company the authority to start extracting oil in that location. But you know what? This is Nigeria. The big bag factor is the crazy part. If your bag is not big enough, you may not know when the announcement for oil block application will be made. And the cost of getting an oil block in Nigeria runs in millions of dollars. So there are only a few people who own oil blocks in Nigeria. One of those people is Folorunsho Alakija, the vice chairman of Famfa Oil. Before she was awarded this oil block, she was a fashion designer, making clothes for both the wealthy and the poor. One of her biggest clients then was Mariam Babangida, the late wife of a former Nigerian head of state, Ibrahim Babangida. Today, Folorunsho Alakija is the richest woman in Africa. According to Forbes, she is worth about $1 billion. But you may be asking, how did she get to the point that she owns an oil block? For you to understand that better, let us start from the beginning. This video will talk about how she met a friend on her way to London, which was where the whole oil conversation started, how she became friends with the Babangida family, what happened to her fashion business, the oil block disagreement she had with the Obasanjo administration, and how she took the Nigerian government to court. In the course of this video, you would be hearing terms like oil block, oil field, oil well. To make it easier for you to understand, an oil well is a well which an oil company drills to get oil. An oil field is a particular location which has been discovered to be rich in oil deposits, and that location might be divided into 2, 3, or 4 parts so that different companies can work in different parts of the field. Then each part is called an oil block. So before Folorunsho Alakija and her family was able to get this oil block, one day she was on an airplane on her way to London discussing with a friend. The friend then was working with an international oil company, and they needed someone in Nigeria to be lifting crude oil and supplying it to the company. The idea was that the person will get an oil exporting license and be exporting crude oil to the company. When this friend reviewed the business to her, Alakija found it interesting, and because this was happening when Ibrahim Babangida was the head of state of Nigeria, and Alakija knew her way to get the attention of the government, she saw it as what she can do. She believed Mariam Babangida would help her get to the oil minister, and hopefully the minister would grant her the license. But it didn't later happen the way she thought. Before then, she was already popular with making these types of expensive clothing, the haute couture. She was making them using African fabrics, and she called her brand Spring Stitches. With those types of clothes, it was easier to get the attention of the worldly class. That was how Mariam Babangida became her customer, the then First Lady of Nigeria. So, after the oil exporting discussion with the friend she met on an airplane, when she got back to Nigeria, she went to meet Mariam Babangida, and as she hoped for, Mrs. Babangida connected her to the then oil minister. She then booked an appointment with the minister. On the day they met, she explained to the minister how she wants to get a license so that she can export oil to her business partners abroad. But the minister gave her bad news. The news was that the Nigerian government then had decided not to allow foreigners take advantage of the oil deposits in Nigeria. the government had placed an instruction that the foreign companies should invest in Nigeria and process the oil here. But because this was during the military regime, the company did not want to invest in Nigeria, and that was how Alakija lost that business opportunity. So she went back to her fashion business many weeks later, because the oil minister earlier told Alakija that there are opportunities for Nigerians in the oil sector. Alakija went back to meet the minister to see where she can fit in. Of course, she contacted Mrs. Babangida, who then connected her to the minister once again. At first, Mrs. Alakija was given the option to provide services for the NNPC, like applying to become the official caterer for the NNPC staff who work at the scene, or maybe applying for the approval to be an official NNPC crude oil transporter, transporting crude from the terminals to the refineries. She then went home and decided to consult some of her relatives who were already working in the oil industry, and they suggested the second option for her. But after several applications, she didn't get any approval for those services. She went back to the minister, and the minister told her, by the time we start connecting more pipelines, we won't be needing trucks to move crude oil. Why not look towards oil exploration and production? Mrs. Alakija concluded that the oil minister did not want to grant her any approval. If she had been applying for the smaller ones and being rejected, how would she get the big one, the oil production license, especially as a new person in the oil industry? But on second thought, it seems the minister wants something better for her. She then went on to do some research on how to seek for such a license. Part of the information she got was that she needed to get some technical partners, and luckily for her, she was able to get some. It was then time to apply for the license. They submitted the first one, but many months later, before they could know what's happening, that oil minister who had been giving them the important information they needed was removed from office, and another person was appointed as a new oil minister, which means they have to start the application all over again. Because this was during the military era, it doesn't take any Senate approval to appoint or fire any minister. The head of state can do anything he decides at any time. And before Alakija and her partners could get any good news, the new oil minister was fired once again. By that time, it was already 2 years of applying for an oil exploration license under 2 different ministers, and there is no sign that something good might come out of it. But in August 1993, under a new oil minister, after the 3rd application, Famfa Oil and her partners finally got an oil exploration license. This was the best they hoped for, a positive news at last. As at then, the company was called Famfa Limited. It was in 1996 that they changed the name and called it Famfa Oil Limited. But despite this good news of getting a license, the company was not awarded the kind of oil block they hoped for. They got an oil block that has a water depth of 5,000 feet. And as a new oil company, they do not have such technology and resources required to explore oil in that depth. Considering that this was in the 90s, technology had not advanced much like today. Unfortunately, their technical partners decided to leave. It was almost obvious that they would likely not be able to get oil in that field. And that means that soon enough, the license would be taken away from them if they couldn't explore the field they had been allocated. 2 years later, they had still not gotten any new technical partners. Then, in 1996, after 3 years the previous partners left, something magical happened. Texaco wanted to expand their oil business in Nigeria, and they were looking for new partners. According to reports, Texaco went to the Department of Petroleum Resources, DPR, a department of the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources, asking questions on the possible companies they can work with. They were then told that Famfa Limited were looking for technical partners. That was how Texaco reached out to Alakija and her husband. The two companies sat down to negotiate the terms of their partnership. The negotiation lasted for about 3 months, and they finally came to an agreement. Texaco would take 40% of whatever comes out of the oil field, while Famfa Oil would hold on to the remaining 60%. It was a good deal, considering that Texaco would provide the expertise needed in the partnership. By August 10, 1996, after they have secured the needed technical partners, they were given an oil prospecting license, OPL, to begin exploring for oil in that field. The license was called OPL 216. Remember, it was not yet certain if they were going to get oil in commercial quantity in that field. It was still a gamble. They may end up not getting enough oil to cover for what they have spent. To make sure that they have enough resources to get oil in that field, Texaco signed a deal with another company, Petrobras. As at then, Petrobras, a Brazilian oil company, was known to be successful in such deep water oil exploration, so it was important to bring them in. Surprisingly, in 1998, after putting so much effort, they discovered oil in commercial quantity in that field. At first, Alakija didn't want to make so much noise about it, but Texaco needed to make it public so that their shareholders would be aware of the success they had just recorded. Then, Texaco made the announcement that oil has been found in OPL 216. This singular announcement brought in problems for Famfa Oil. Remember, this oil block in question, OPL 216, was not the type of oil block most companies wanted. Everyone thought that the effort it demands to get oil in that field was not worth it. This was why Texaco decided to make it public to celebrate the success. But immediately that announcement was made. By 1999, this time, Nigeria has moved from military leadership to a civilian government, and Obasanjo was the president. The government then decided to move in and take a share of the oil in that block. Before then, when this oil block was awarded to Famfa Oil, according to Mrs. Alakija, part of the agreement was that the government still maintained the right to take over the oil block if they wished to. But before they could do so, they would have to negotiate with the company on why it is important for the government to come in and also pay compensation to the company. Unfortunately, the government did not seek any negotiation. Out of the 60% that Famfa Oil owned in their partnership with Texaco, the government took 40% and left Famfa Oil with only 20%. This was not the type of intervention the Alakija family were expecting from the government. And after years of searching for oil, when it was time to make some gain, what they worked for was being taken away. But because Mr. Alakija is a lawyer, and as the family felt they were being treated unfairly, the company took the government to court. While the court processes were going on, the federal government took another 10% from Famfa Oil. The company was then left with only 10%, while Texaco and Petrobras still maintained their 40%. Remember, from that 1999, when the government notified the company that they would take 40% of their interest, till 2012, the court proceedings lasted a total of 12 years. It took the efforts of different courts to decide on the case until the 4th day of May 2012. The Supreme Court of Nigeria gave judgment in favor of Famfa Oil Limited and against the federal government. According to Mr. Alakija, the court decided that the actions of the federal government were illegal, unlawful, and unconstitutional, and that Famfa Oil should take back what was taken away from them. Victory at last. Today, Famfa Oil is one of the most successful indigenous oil companies in Nigeria. The company has expanded to other African countries, including Sierra Leone. And Mrs. Alakija had abandoned her fashion brand. She is currently the vice chairman of Famfa Oil, an evangelist and one of the most successful African women in business. Thank you so much for your time.